Welcome to the Mama Bear Diaries. This is Deborah Giesling, and we are on primer number 10. We're going to talk about serious mental illness and violence. It is a difficult topic, just like all the rest of the topics we've discussed here, but this is a really important one to really kind of flesh out, and hopefully I do this justice and can kind of put my thoughts together on it. I've got notes in multiple places, but let's just go dive into it. Again, serious mental illness is it's a subset of mental illness that is debilitating. It affects your life. It affects your quality of life. It affects what you're able to do and not do. And it's not, for the most part, a good majority of people in this category have something called anosognosia. They don't understand that they have an illness. Excuse me. And they need someone to help them. They need someone to advocate for them to get into treatment, and that usually involves the court system and involuntary hospitalization and the process of evaluation. And it's no fun. It's difficult. And so we're going to discuss this issue that is cropping up. I've done a piece on the stabbing in North Carolina of Irina Zarutsky, I think I'm saying that right, by a man who we now know struggled with schizophrenia. He was untreated and fell through the gaps in the system repeatedly. There was basically, the truth is, there was nowhere to put him. There was nowhere for him. And that's the problem we're facing right now in this day. So I did a piece on that, kind of how did we get here? And I went all the way back to the very first hospital that was founded in part by Benjamin Franklin. And of all the things we know him for, all the things he's done, he said this is the thing that brought him the most satisfaction. This, of all of his political maneuvers, was getting Pennsylvania and the citizens to come together, and with I think it was the very first matching grant that was done with charitable giving and the state. And the intention was to get the insane and the poor who are wandering the streets, the sick, off the streets, and get them care and get them help. And so I start there and I go through and kind of trace the IMD exclusion and how that has brought us to where we are now. If you're interested in that, I will link that in there as well. But let's talk about this. There's two different camps that say, don't say that the mentally ill or are more violent, that are, that produces stigma. And then we have another camp that has to talk about it because that's the only thing that gets the public's opinion, sadly, and the politicians' opinion. And so we end up kind of reacting to that. And so that's the second part of this that's kind of concerning me right now. But let's just focus in on when we talk about violence and we talk about serious mental illness, we need wisdom. We also need compassion. We need both of those things to go hand in hand. And scripture calls us to do both. And so as we think about those who are prone to be more violent, it's actually not people that have anxiety or mild depression in general. And even the 4% of the seriously mentally ill, it's a subset of that. So it's a smaller percentage who are not getting treatment. And then if you involve substance use, the risk of violence becomes higher. But if they are not getting treated for their delusions, which can be frightening, if someone they really think that you're out to harm them, they're going to try to harm you first. They're going to try to protect themselves. Or if some voice or some thought or some delusion is telling them that your mother has been she's got an alien inside of her and the only way to save her is to kill her. That's their reality. That's what they're dealing with. And so that's why on-ramps to treatment are so important, especially for those who have really severe and hard delusions and hard voices that they're hearing. That's their reality. And until we intervene on their behalf to help them get to stability and help them to get to a place where they can decipher what's real and what's not real, it's a very dangerous place. And it's very dangerous for the families, because the families are the ones who are caring for those individuals. And if the system is not set up to where their loved one can get help, and the system is working against them and not ensuring that that family is safe, that's even more dangerous. That's why we hear these stories. Most of the stories are not even getting counted, actually, because they're usually in the domestic violence category. And we're not failing to recognize that a good portion of these individuals or these tragedies all have to do with untreated serious mental illness. And so, yes, the untreated seriously mentally ill can be violent, are prone to violence. And you think about the onset of schizophrenia or some of these psychotic related illnesses, it's late teens, early 20s. These are individuals who are young, they're strong. It's people that have dementia, Alzheimer's, we know they can become violent too, but they're older and they're weaker and they're not able to carry out some of those things. Just think about it, common sense. So there needs to be a focus and a refocus on this. But the thing that's really just right now, it's just unsettling politically what's going on, the back and forth. I am really encouraged by the direction this administration is going with our policies and putting a refocus on funding assisted outpatient treatment and funding places that can get people into treatment and kind of decipher, what does this individual need? Let's get them into treatment, which I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to have a hard time with that. If we're going to focus again on this upfront, you're going to find out what all the families know, there's no place for them to go. Hence, go back to my piece on the IMD exclusion. That does not fund assisted living. It does not fund long-term hospitalizations. There's nowhere for them to go. So we've got to think of the whole continuum. But anyway, at the front of this, though, the way we're talking about those that are on the streets and the way we're correlating violence with them, it's almost as if they are not human, that they are somehow psychopaths. Thank you very much, Criminal Minds, and many other shows who've just fed that myth through the years. Psychopathy, schizophrenia, totally different things. Bipolar disorder, totally different things. These are brain illnesses, and they need someone to intervene and help them. So we've failed these individuals. So the rhetoric surrounding this, to me, matters. Normally, I don't care about rhetoric. Normally, I don't care about stigma, because I don't think stigma is the main problem. I think lack of a place to go and get care is the problem. But the way we're talking about it concerns me, and it's unsettling to families. There's a lot of fear still. And when we focus and hype up and call people that have actually carried out these tragedies on the streets that we see and on subways and on light rails, most of those don't get caught on camera. But when we hype this up and we call these individuals monsters, and we talk about locking them up or, involuntarily lethally injecting them, just get them off the streets, we're still dehumanizing these individuals. And that's why I think it's so important that the church can speak into this, because the church is connected to Christ. And there is this concern I have about a Christless lack of compassion. And gosh, I love Milton Friedman. I'm a free market conservative all the day long. One of his famous quotes that I actually really like is the important thing is to make it politically profitable for the wrong people to do the right thing. Well, if we're talking about, economic policy, or we're talking about something uh, other than this topic, serious mental illness, I would say yes, I'd agree with that. I did a lot of work with DJ Jaffe, who wrote Insane Consequences, and really brought this issue to the forefront with the Helping Families and Mental Health Crisis Act with Dr. Tim Murphy, and just did heroic work on that. But he really highlighted all of these tragedies because he said it's the only way to get their attention. No one's going to care. And we were polar opposites politically. He was very liberal and I'm very conservative, but we were good friends. He stayed in my home. He came out and did a fundraiser for us. He spoke at our fundraiser. He sold his books at our fundraiser and donated all the profits to our organization. Where he was just a great person. But we really got everybody's attention, and now some of those things we're seeing kind of the fruit of some of that work, the early work that was done. There's only about 5 of us that really know that work, but it concerns me because the posture towards these people, our attitude towards them, it's got to change, and the church can speak into this. Christians, we've got to speak into this because this is our obligation as a nation, but also as Christians to speak up for the weak. That's why our organization is called P82, Project Restoration. P82 comes from Psalm 82, 3-4. Give justice to the weak and the fatherless. Maintain the right of the afflicted and the destitute. Who is more destitute right now than the seriously mentally ill on the streets and our prisons? Rescue the weak and needy. Deliver them from the hand of the wicked. That's our call as Christians, to do this. To do this for the right reasons, not political reasons. And people today are going to be doing things. It's a cry right now. Get everybody off the street. Get the mentally ill off the street. But why? There's a compassion that's missing. It's not out there. And so that's why I think we've got to be engaged, whether it's, just in how we relate with one another in our churches and in our community, but also in the public square, how we talk about this, because it really matters. It really does. And another one of my favorite authors is Flannery O'Connor. And John Piper did an article. It's a really short article, very brief. And she spoke a lot about disability, and her stories they're kind of hard to read. She's I don't know. It's kind of not if it's not your cup of tea, I understand why. But she wrote about a tenderness. We can say, yes, we care about something, but a tenderness cut off from Christ leads to terror. And we see on one end, we see in Canada and other countries how they're already giving people with serious mental illness or just general mental illness, they're giving them the right to assisted suicide and saying your life really is not worth living this way with suffering like this. You should just go ahead and instead of caring for you, we're going to help you commit suicide. And the other end of this, though, is what's concerning me, is saying that these are just mentally deranged, evil people walking the streets. No. We're the ones who have let them down. The other part of our name is Project Restoration. This is not about a project. They're not the project. We're the project. We're restoring our obligation to help the weak, That's what we're doing. We're restoring here something that we have neglected for decades and pushed to the side and said, this is too hard. This is too costly. We can't help these individuals. And, look at them now. They're just stabbing people, killing people. My gosh, you're just evil people. It's just a big spiritual battle out there. The world's getting bad. Just a bunch of demons running around. No, these are treatable illnesses. We're the ones, quite frankly, who should repent. We really are, because we've allowed this to happen and we have not made this a priority. We haven't listened to the people and the families that have been speaking up for decades. We ignore their stories. We ignore them because it's too hard to look at. It's too hard. That's what Flannery O'Connor wrote about. The things that we don't want to look at, the grotesque, the hard, that leads to the terror. That leads to washing those people away and out of our society. So I hope this made sense. Violence is real, but we don't need to be afraid. We need to figure out how to help people and get them into treatment. And then where do they go after treatment? Where do they go after these centers that we're talking about building and housing people, getting them off the streets, putting them in a house and in a big facility, and kind of distinguishing, do they need substance use treatment? Do they need, mental health treatment? What do they need? Well, get ready, because you're going to have a big aha moment when you realize there's nowhere to send them. That's exactly why I got involved, because they were telling me my son was too sick and needed a higher level of care. Guess what? There was no higher level of care. We've destroyed it. We've neglected it. So let's acknowledge that violence can happen, but let's acknowledge that it's up to us to help these people to maintain the right of the afflicted and the destitute. This is on us. So, church. The church is vital because the church is connected to Christ. The church is following Christ. And now the church's main role is not to go out and fix all these things, but the church can be a voice, and individuals within that church can help, especially if you've been affected by this. So we need to have more honest conversations like this. And it's very important. So I will link some of the things that I mentioned in there in my Substack posts. But again, this is primer number 10. That was my goal to do 10, but I think I'm going to do a lot more. Anyway, thanks for listening. Come back soon. And Brown Eyes, this is all for you. I love you.